So tonight we're going to be decapitating more 508c1a trust demons. Now before I start naming some names, I'm going to give you some frameworks to think about when deciding and doing your research. Who do you trust when you're trying to build your own trust? It's a difficult question because when it comes to private trust in particular, all the statutory agents aren't even going to talk about it. They're going to pretend like it's not even there. So as you go further and further towards the center of the matrix to, discover what's really going on the other side in the private world, now all of a sudden these host of different characters pop up. And it appears there's this illusion of choice where it appears like there's these different options to get into the private realm. But the reality is, out of all of these, only one of them can be the best. Because if you stack up all these different choices, one of them will be the best. One of them will be better than the others in terms of its simplicity, in terms of its accuracy, in terms of just many other variables that we could point to. And what's happened is many people have seen the best way and then have distorted it for their own gains. And that's what makes them a demon, because they have no soul, no heart, and they just want to manipulate information for their own profit and their own gain. And so tonight we're going to be barbecuing many of these, and look, there's an infinite amount of them out there, so I'm definitely not going to be able to cover nearly all of them, but I think some of the most obvious ones, you might enjoy hearing who they are. So first of all, when you're doing your own research and trying to decide, who to trust, one of the first obvious things to look for is who has the most proof, and who has the proof over a long period of time and a long track record. So if you jump into our community at Bulletproof Retirement, we've been doing this for a few years. We've had our community open, and there's many, many examples of people having success, out in the open. They're willing to discuss it with you. And that's, just the start of the rabbit hole. Then when it comes to Liberated Academy, where we get our trust documents from, there's just a whole bunch of proof there going back well over a decade. So that's really the first thing. A lot of these demons, they'll have maybe some testimonials, but they'll be very surface layer. They won't actually be testimonials about doing anything. They'll be just some people who were like, yeah, I enjoyed some information. That was great. It's like, okay, yeah, you took a course and you learned some BS terms that you did nothing with. What did that actually help you? What did you actually do about it? And the answer is most of the time, absolutely nothing. So most of these demons, they have no proof. They have no testimonials. They have just nothing. It's all smoke and mirrors, and they just say they did something, and maybe they'll, show a little snapshot or a little screenshot or something, but there won't be consistent, repeatable proof from many people being able to do the process. Because look, even if they did do some one-off thing for one person, why would that be useful if you can't repeat it in a systematic manner? So the first thing I would say is, whoever you're going to decide to look for to help you with financial affairs, look for their proof. And that includes if you decide to go to the public realm. If you wanted to use an accountant or lawyer, I would hope they have proof, and I would hope it's consistent, and I would hope it works every time. And look, most lawyers and accountants, they can't do that. They're not going to guarantee their work, that you may or may not get audited. It's all probabilistic in nature. So if it may or may not work, if that's good enough for you, great. I hope you enjoy that. But if you want absolute proof where it works every time, then that's the first thing that you should be looking for in doing your research. The second thing I would say is, when you look at who you want to be your teacher in this, because if you don't know anything, you want to learn from someone who's done it and learn from someone who's executed on it themselves and also has helped many other people execute on that information. So I would say that you want to look for someone who embodies this idea of service. And are they doing it to help others, or are they trying to glorify their own ego? And there are a number of people in the private trust world that are just, trying to amass all these things and show how cool they are and get all these materialistic things. And it's pretty obvious that they're glorifying their own ego. And why is it obvious? Well, they're showing, oh, well, look, I got all these great cars. I'm on this great jet. I've got all these fancy chains. And that's just the start of the iceberg of this self-aggrandizement and glorification. And that's a huge red flag, to someone who has discernment, because what is a trust? A trust is when you learn how to be a trustee, and what are you doing as trustee? You're looking after a corpus of assets on behalf of others, on behalf of your beneficiaries. So you are learning, by definition, how to be of service. And that's a whole different paradigm from learning how to own things and how to build wealth and how to glorify yourself in this reality. If you really want to be of service to God, then you know that everything you have is due to God anyway. So we might as well give it all to Him and learn how to be a better custodian of the things we're given and how to be of service to others in this life. And so whoever you learn from, they need to be proving that themselves. They can't just be talking about God, oh, God this, God that. Many people are using the name Jesus Christ and just talk. And then they're driving around in their Rolls Royce, past the homeless people on the street. Like, how does that even make sense? Seriously. Like, you're talking about biblical principles of money. Many of these influencers, are just all about the Bible. And then they're like, yeah, I made millions of dollars and I got my Rolls Royce and I've got 50 houses. Well, guess what? There are people starving on the street. There's poverty everywhere. There's just crazy things happening. And I'm not saying it's everyone's responsibility to fix the world. That's not even possible. That's God's responsibility. But still, with what little, you are given in this world, what are you going to do with it? God is watching. And if He sees you buying watches and flying on jets and driving ridiculous cars, I doubt it's going to look favorably on you when judgment comes. So look for people who are ultimately embodying that service in their actions and what they do and how they spend their own money, right? And when I found Liberated Academy and John McCaig, he 100% embodies that. And you can see that in how he spends his own money and how he takes care of others and how he's put himself on the line many times. And I've learned from that myself and how I take care of my own assets and my own family's assets and how we, spend that in a way to look after ourselves, of course, because we're all, living off the grace of God. But then beyond that, what can we do for others? And so that's something that really, it hurts my heart when I see some of the things I see in this world, and you see all these people with all this money, like infinite amounts of money, and they just care nothing about it. So, those kinds of people who are talking about private trusts and just, then flaunting their wealth, it's just a massive red flag to me. And finally, and this is another very key point, is your teacher operating in simplicity? Because the opposite of that is complexity. And complexity is the game that the devil is playing, because that's what the IRS code is. 10,000 pages of just complex BS rules where they're just puppeting all the slaves like a marionette and saying, hey, you got to jump through all these hoops and then do all these write-offs and then do this and this and this and this and this, and then do it all over again the next year. And while you're using a bunch of intermediaries to help you. So, first of all, a lot of these trust gurus out there, they want to insert themselves as intermediaries and charge a really high price. So that, again, red flag. But also, they're way overcomplicating the process. They're trying to say that you need multiple different entities working together and you need different shells and this one should own this one and oh yeah, there's this disregard entity over here. No. When it's done correctly and you're living your entire life in service to God, then guess what? You can run your entire life out of a trust that accomplishes that service. You don't need to have multiple different trusts, owning each other and other public entities that are disregarded and whatever other crap. So there's many people in the private trust world that are teaching things like that. And so unless it's extremely simple, then it's probably being done wrong. So those are the three, primary frameworks that I would look at when deciding, who you're going to go with when you're trying to learn your education on how to create your own trust. Because ultimately that's what this is. You're not doing it under the government with all the things that they created. You're trying to use your own knowledge that you gain from learning and then create your own trust. And that way, that's what defines it as private. So as far as the trust demons that are floating around out there, because this is a templated document, and really the best one that I've seen at Liberated Academy that's been around the longest, because it's just such a straightforward and easy process, there are plenty of people who are spiritually bankrupt that have done that process and then thought, oh, well, now that I've done it, I can just steal it and then teach it as my own, maybe tweak a few things here and there so that, it's mine now, and then I can just go out and sell it. And over the years, many, many demons have done this. It's just insane, and it's multiplying every day that passes. A new demon pops up like a cockroach out of the ether, and because they're doing things that are very commercial, they're a lot of them have very slick marketing. They have, again, they're flashing all the obvious things to show that they have status. So they're signaling status and wealth. And so people think, oh, well, that guy must know what he's talking about, and that guy's got a lot of followers. And a lot of people who were business type people in other fields pivoted into the trust world once they found this, and then amassed huge followings, and then now are just selling this and, demonizing the land. So, the list that I have, and we talk about many of the specifics in the Bulletproof Retirement community. So if you really want more comprehensive details on who to look to and who not to look to, jump in the link below and you can join and, ask us questions and see more about what others are saying. Because it's not just me. There's many others that are confirming, these disgusting pieces of scum that are just everywhere right now. But I want to point out some of the more obvious ones, partly because it's even funny to me and just ridiculous how bankrupt these people are, and also how bombastic their antics are. So the first one that I want to call it by name is Rick the Wealth Coach, aka Rick the Wealth Demon, or Rick the Wealth Pimp, as someone in my community aptly named him. And this guy is just one of the worst, because first of all, his marketing is just like absurd. He dresses up in all these kinds of ridiculous outfits and beards and puts on these little skits. And his tagline is, oh, well, if you put your $1 in the bank, you'll get 10 times your bank deposits back. And it's like, no, that just is a scam. That doesn't happen. You don't get 10 times your fucking bank deposits back for any reason. No bank will do that. There's no 1099B or whatever the fuck they say he says that process is. And no, his wife who supposedly has done that, no, I doubt she's ever fucking done anything like that. And look, even if one person did do it, it's not a repeatable process that I've seen anyone else be able to do. And the reality is, it's just not possible, because I know people who've made it all the way to his inner circle of hell. They literally got scammed for $155,000, because that's what happens. He doesn't even tell you that at the beginning. You start in his funnel where you pay like $300 for his Wealth IQ challenge, where you learn absolutely jack shit. And then you got to pay even more money to ask questions, and then you got to start paying huge amounts of money for his ministry trust, which he completely stole, and he even changed stuff. So not only is the trust that he has stolen from Liberty Aid Academy, but he also changed it so it doesn't even work. So now you're paying tens of thousands of dollars for something that doesn't even work, and then you hit his inner circle of hell for $155,000, and you're supposed to be able to get 10 times your bank deposits back. And spoiler alert, you don't. Nothing happens, and I know multiple people who are currently in the process of suing him because they had bad discernment and they made it all the way and they didn't get anything out of it. Thankfully for them, they actually found the right way to do it, and their soul will probably be saved by that. So Rick the Wealth Pimp, he's out there, he's powwowing with other biblical influencers like Myron Golden. They're having nice little podcasts about, biblical principles of money, and then they're driving around in their Rolls Royces, laughing at the little fucking poor people on the street. Like, that's not what people who follow Jesus Christ do. They don't flaunt their wealth and then talk about making millions of dollars and then laugh at you for it, okay? That's what fucking demons do. So these guys are just absolutely despicable to me. And if you have any sort of discernment whatsoever, you won't follow this clown who's dressing up in outfits and also like singing to people. What the fuck is that? He'll get you on a webinar, say absolutely nothing of substance. He'll talk a little bit, like there's a few little threads of substance where he's like maybe talking about something about private, and yeah, okay, there's a private trust, great. A lot of people know that there's a private, realm out there now. It's not like that much of a secret anymore. But beyond that, there's nothing of substance. And then he'll start singing to the sheep that are on his calls, like fucking just, It's like, again, it's like one of these stories where the demon just sings you to sleep, and so you're like lulled by his charm somehow. So yeah, I just hope people don't fall for that. Another one that's interesting, maybe not as quite prolific as Rick the Wealth Pimp, is Private Wealth Academy, PWA. And they're running ads across different platforms, under the guise of Bulletproof Trust. And part of how I discovered they were fake in about 2 minutes was they have a private YouTube channel, which already is a red flag, because why would you keep it private? If it's so great, keep it public, let everyone put it into the light of day for everyone to see, and then everyone can decide for themselves whether it's great or not. But they made it private because what they did was they clipped up testimonials directly from Liberty Academy, and they kept in the word Bulletproof Trust, and then they marketed it under the brand name of Bulletproof Trust, leading people to PWA, and then they undercut the price, so they charge a very cheap price, so people are like, oh yeah, well, that seems like a bargain, so I'll go here. And yeah, it's a bargain if you want to be sent straight to hell, basically. So, same thing. If you want to get something that doesn't work, that's fraudulent. And then they also claim that, they had a separation from Liberty Academy for legal reasons. Bullshit. They stole all their work, ripped it off, and then diluted it down so it doesn't even work and is fraudulent. And then they're now selling it and claiming it's their own. So that's just another really, really obvious one that a lot of people in my community, some of them have already fallen for it, and some of them are, in the process of doing their research and exploring. So then there's a whole classification of demons that are using these fancy terminologies and lingo out there. A lot of them happen to be black and happen to have dreadlocks, and there's this guy by the name of Amr Law who likes to drive pink Bentleys and fly around in private jets. And look, these kind of guys, part of how it's obvious that they're just leading you to hell is, why are they making it so complicated? Why do you have to use the term exclusive equity? Anyone who comes into my community and says, oh, I've been studying equity, great, you've been studying something for years, and what have you done with it? Absolutely jack shit. So what has that studying actually helped you? Hasn't helped you at all. You just learned a bunch of terms in a book. You might as well have, just gone to some useless college and learned more BS there. Why? What's even the point? And, all these terms like exclusive equity, suretyship, whatever. There's this whole rabbit hole of fancy terms and all these different maxims that people are parroting at me. Inevitably, people who are talking about that haven't actually done anything with it, and haven't actually done anything that's repeatable, that's consistent, that's simple. And why do I know it's not simple? Because all they can do is just talk about fancy terms. They don't actually have a trust. They haven't actually protected assets. So, he's spending too much time with his chains and, driving retarded cars and on jets to actually help anybody. And yeah, maybe people are learning nice things, great. If you want to learn nice things and not do anything with it, then that's the path for you. Congratulations. But if you actually want to, go from starting the information to actually acting on it within hours and getting things done, well, then that's what we're going to do here in our community and over at Liberty Academy. I've had people that have started the trust, and literally within one afternoon, they will get it notarized, they'll get their bank account open, and they'll actually get everything in place initially. And yeah, there's a deeper rabbit hole where you can do much more complex stuff beyond that, but they will cover the basics in literally one day. One day. And yet there are people that have been studying equity for years and just done nothing. So it's all bullshit, and it's all a hoax that is, it's got the guise of oh, I feel good because I'm learning something. But you're just learning unnecessary things, basically, which is just as bad. It's just as bad. And yeah, you're circling around the truth, but you're not actually at the truth itself. So that's really the key problem with this whole category of people that are doing this sort of equity type stuff. So again, even that word right there is just a red flag to me, because it's just an unnecessary word that you don't need. What you need is a trust. To protect your body, to protect your assets, protect your family. That's what you need. And you don't need to learn the word equity to do a trust. You just need the trust document, and then you need to learn some other basic rules on how to use it. And that's what we cover. So, that was definitely covers a good amount of the people floating around out there. And I'm trying to think, there was a few more that I think I wanted to mention here, but it's sort of slipping my mind at this point. I don't want to ramble because there's just such an infinite amount. Like, there's definitely some smaller ones I can think of. Another one that I'm going to mention because it's in the realm of complexity, and it's just a huge red flag when you see terms like people are throwing this term disregarded entity at me. And that's, one of these companies is doing that is IWS, Infinite Wealth Strategies. And look, these guys are pushing this non-grantor trust for a while. Now all of a sudden they're talking about 508c1a all over the place. And they're saying, oh, you need a 508c1a, but then you need this trust, and then you need an LLC too, and then all the other things can own the LLC, and then the LLC is disregarded, and the IRS doesn't even know, it's invisible, you're a ghost, ooh. But like, why have an LLC that's a disregarded entity when you don't even need the LLC at all? You can just use a trust and then have no public entity where you don't need any kind of tax filing and zero footprint in the matrix whatsoever. So these guys are just complete demons, complete scammers, and now they're just piggybacking off a trend because they see what's actually working, and they're trying to co-opt that. And look, they have hundreds of thousands of followers, and just like all the other demons do. And so they have the appearance that they know what they're talking about, but many people hear them and they know in their heart that something's not right. So look, that's not, the full comprehensive list, but it's a little snapshot of what's out there right now. And I felt the need to, put the names to the names because, maybe I'll get some hate for it, and I hope some of them come back at me because, I don't feel bad about it. These guys should be pinned to the wall and just crucified. And when judgment comes for them, it won't be my job. The angel Gabriel will take his sword and just fucking decapitate them. But at least in my own way, I can help you now, and hopefully you'll use your discernment and look very carefully and ask them some very careful questions if you decide you're considering doing business with them. And look, if you want to do things a simple way and the way that's proven to work with the largest, most provable track record of proof, then look, jump in the Bulletproof Retirement community below, and you're going to see how we do things here and how we use the work at Liberate Academy to create such massive success in very short periods of time. And I look forward to seeing many of you in there. And for those of you who want to follow the demons in the night, well, good luck to you because your soul is going to need it come judgment.